Good morning and welcome to another video for the Suicide and Spirituality Project. Just get out of my driveway here. It's very wet today and this driveway is very steep and slippery. I thought I'd like to just cover the basics again today. And when I say again, every time you talk about this stuff, you kind of express it a different way. It's not like you're reading it word for word from a book. The expression of one's own spirituality comes from your life experience of it, you know, and the experience which any spiritual path should offer is the determiner of your expression. So when I say experience of it, I mean I speak from my own experience of having looked back, perhaps, I don't know how to really talk about this, but looked back at the world from outside of the dimension of time and space. And every time I tell people that, they roll their eyes and it's like, oh, what the hell, what were you smoking? And, you know, and I'm not talking about an out-of-body experience or any of those sorts of things. I'm talking about a no-body, no-world experience in its entirety, which you can have. And in one of my last videos, I talked about, I think it was DMT, the drug, which basically is simply the sap from an acacia tree, a particular kind of acacia tree, where people in taking this drug have had experiences of connection with God, you know, or being outside of their body or outside of the physical realm and meeting all sorts of divine beings and things like that. And whilst I would say that, well, yes, but that was triggered by a drug, what actually is triggered by is a release of specific chemicals in the brain. Right now, in spiritual work, the same sort of thing happens. You have specific dopamine and endorphin and all of these sorts of different things in the brain that are released and motivates the consciousness to go beyond the parameters of its, what would you call, its usual operation. Now, I remember watching a science show years ago. I love quantum physics and everything. I can totally relate spirituality and quantum physics together. I mean, I'm not talking about the Big Bang, but on the molecular level. But I was watching a science show some years ago, and they were talking about the mind. And they had a test sample of people rigged up with the little, you know, you've seen these things that people put on their heads. What are they called? The bloody monitor buttons or whatever. They put like a beanie on and it's all got heaps of wires. And they had people doing different mental things like meditation and all sorts of different stimuli and measuring it. And they could measure the brainwave activity of the mind from dead zero to like negative 40 ohms. I think ohms or something was the measure of whatever it was, but to negative 40 and then to above zero to positive 40. And that was the basic range of brainwave activity for 99% of the test results. And then when the brainwave activity got below negative 40 or something like that, people started having hallucinations and dark thinking and felt suicidal and everything like that. And when it got above 40, people got maniacally happy and what might be called deliriously happy, you know, which on the extreme, people, you know, you get admitted to hospital for being completely off your head happy as well as sad. So there was this bandwidth of kind of operation that was considered to be normal brainwave operation. And with spirituality, what happens is you step outside of that normal brainwave operation. So with meditation, you're learning to still the mind completely quiet, right? Which allows not to the left or to the right, minus or positive, but if you think of it as a vertical activity of consciousness, it allows the activity of the mind to rise up to higher consciousness, if you like, beyond that 40 sort of range. And I know I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, but once you get beyond that range vertically, and it's really hard to talk about the activity of the mind, and you'll find out when you try meditation, right? But once you get beyond that thing, all sorts of stuff can happen, phenomena and everything like that. And that was one of the things they found out in their studies too, was that phenomena, and people would have visions and see things, and things would appear and disappear and become delusional and whatever at each end of that 40 experiment. But the difference between that and meditation and guided spirituality is that what's actually happening is you're having a controlled, right? Now a lot of people do this uncontrolled, but you're having a controlled ascension, if you like, or a controlled raising up of your vibration through a connection that you make with the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of wholeness within you. Right? Now that's something that you have to take on faith. It's like, well, I don't know what's within me. I only use 7% of my thinking capacity of my brain, and I don't know what the rest of my brain really does. I'm told that it sort of takes care of my automatic motor functions, like driving a car and sleeping and running the body and everything else. But all of that can be taken care of with, I think it was 2% of the brain's capacity. So there's really a whole 90% of the brain that does all sorts of other stuff. And if you're anything scientific like me, not that I am, but if you have any kind of interest and you've watched a few videos, you'll realise that most of us, me included, are barely scratching the surface of our potential. And I remember watching years ago, I think it was a TV show or a movie called Defending Your Life, I think with Dustin Hoffman, where the guy dies, the lead actor in the movie dies and goes to like the way station between heaven and earth, or between the Bardo states, and he's in this kind of Bardo state where he meets with a counsellor, and the counsellor says to him, well, we're just going to assess you and see whether you have to go back to earth and try again, or whether you can move on. And he explains to the guy how he's only been using 5% of his potential, or 5% of his brain. And the guy goes, well, what happens when you start using more than 5% or whatever of your brain? And he said, well, you don't want to be on Earth anymore. That's pretty funny to me, because having once been suicidal, I don't want to be here either. But we have a job to do, and we all have this thing that we pull together in called the greater good, and so here we are. So the experience then of self, the experience of direct union with the divine, of being face to face in God, or one with God, enlightenment, salvation, however you want to call that, is a real experience that you can have. You don't need DMT to have it. And in fact, I would say that if you are using drugs to have this experience, or try and have this experience, that you are trying to force yourself to escape the shell of your temporal encapsulation, and you cannot do that, because part and parcel of the escape or the awakening is the purification of the mind. So you can't really jump ahead and steal that experience, or fake that experience, or force that experience. And whilst you may have experiences that show you that there is something else, you still have to transit through the Bardo states or the afterlife states before you get to move on in the journey of the soul or come back, and that's a true thing. And anyone who's studied a bit of Buddhism will tell you that there are many meditators historically throughout the and I'm doing a terrible job of this one today, but anyway, throughout Buddhist history, who have gone into deep trance states naturally and accessed some of these next world or higher world experiences and come back to tell what actually goes on. And there are also people who have had near-death experiences who have also gone on to meet other beings from other realms and to come back to talk about it and what goes on. So it's not like the information's not out there, it's just really a matter of whether you want to believe in it or not, or whether you want to look at it or not and start to put a bit of investigation into your own process. For me, the world was always a very curious place. Why is it like this? Why is there rich and poor and such inequality in the world? And why is it so, so dualistic? And of course now I know, but it took the investigation, or the sincere and heartfelt investigation of a particular spiritual path and an avenue of self-inquiry to reveal these things to me. Just as many of you are now having the same revelations and the same aha moments in your own mind. And I don't think this is what I wanted to make this video about today, but anyway, it's probably going to be a good one. So the experience, and the experience is what propels you on. If I hadn't had the experience of being, let's say, beyond the physical realm and looking back, or being one in God and realizing that the world was an illusion, or the world is a virtual landscape, like a classroom for learning to make choices based on identity, I probably would have just put that rope around my neck again, tried again, and wouldn't be here today. But anyone who's feeling the same way, feeling suicidal, feeling depressed when they look out at the world, it's like, man, the big picture is so much more mind-blowing. It's so hard to explain, and I can understand why people don't understand it, and why people don't relate to it, and why people don't believe me when I tell them what it's about. And it's a funny thing. One of the things in my spiritual path, which and really the path is just a process of ongoing applications of principles, but one of the concepts and premises that my applications are based on is the acceptance of atonement, or the acceptance of at one-ment for myself. Right? Everything is all one, therefore there is no one else that needs to hear this. So when I say that people don't understand it, or that I get blank stares and rolled eyeballs and everything else, it's like, well, that's just part and parcel of it, but you won't understand it without the experience. And much like if you've watched The Matrix, and if you haven't watched it, man, go and watch it if you like these videos, and if you can put up with my attempts to bumble through saying what I'm trying to say. But if you like The Matrix, go and watch it, and go and pay close attention to the part where Morpheus is explaining to him about the nature of the world, and he takes the pill and wakes up, takes the red pill. Alright, well, I have no clue what I was intending to say today, if there was an intention. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say, and no good deed goes unpunished. I love all these old people's sayings, A stitch in time saves nine. It's like, alright. And that stitch in time saves nine saying is really cool. It's like it's really applicable to healing relationships and things, It's like the little twinge of despair and upset. It's like, all right, let me heal that now, because that's the tip of an iceberg, and I don't want it showing up as more of the iceberg later. So let me make that stitch in time now, rather than having to do 9 stitches later. You know, that's one that I've used many times in my own healing. So, all right, well that's it. I don't know what else to say. So maybe I won't even publish this one. All right, love ya.